Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader, and Happy New Year to everybody. I apologize if this is coming very late. I know I'm going to do the December wrap up and that probably not many people would be interested since the new year has started to what I've read in December. However, I've been constant throughout the year and I did want to put one on. I clearly just came out of the shower, so my hair are a mess, but we're gonna deal with it. I'm gonna try and be as brief as possible. I've not read much in December due to me being in Italy for most of the month and being with family. I did manage to go back, and that's also the reason why I didn't pre-film these and put this up before the end of the year or in the first few days of the year, as I came back in January. Without further ado, you've seen the statistics, let's dive into what I've read. So the first thing I finished in December was Last Killer by Anne Rule. This is a pick that I had for my true crime TBR, and with this I completed that TBR. And this is the story of Jerry Brudos. He was a serial killer. In here she named him Last Killer. I understand why, because this guy was clearly playing out his fantasy and he had a series of fetishism that he would force on his victims, and that's where the name comes from. So you just follow his story, the story of the victims and what happened to him and how he was apprehended and so on. I had not read Anne Rule in ages and ages, but I do like her writing. I always found her true crime informative. This was no different. I gave this full 4 stars, and I also find out in here why Jerry Brudos was one of a kind in a sense, is not publicized as a serial killer as some others, and the reason why that there was no trial. So he pleads guilty and he never gets through a trial, and that's why probably the media and in general criminologists and so on, it's not very much publicized his name. So I had heard of him just passing by, but I never knew his full story, and now I added all in these. Then I finished the Discworld, officially finished all the novels in the Discworld series. Stay tuned, I will definitely do an informative video on it and on my favorite and less favorite ones in the series. So this is book number 41 and the last one that Terry Pratchett wrote before passing away in 2015, and this is The Shepherd Crown, and it's the final book in also the sub-series. Discworld is made of sub-series, so this is the last one in the Tiffany Aching sub-series. I did appreciate that at the end there is a disclaimer saying that Terry Pratchett, when he finished this book, he didn't have time to do the edits or add stuff as he would normally do in other of his works because he simply was too sick and then passed away. So there is a chance he might have changed, tweaked things a tiny bit, so we don't get the story completely edited by him. And that's also maybe why this concludes the series, but not in a way that feels very conclusive, if it makes sense. So he might have thought about continue on the series or add other installments. So although I gave this 3 stars and I think it's not definitely one of the strongest in the Discworld series, still one that I am very happy to be done with. And overall it does conclude Tiffany Aching stories, meaning that I don't feel like it's completely undone or that someone should continue the series. Like, it is self-contained, as pretty much all the Discworld books are. So it was touching reading the last part. I think during the last few books, Terry Pratchett kind of sacrifices a bit of his humor that I loved him so much about, to delve into more serious topics, which would not be in itself an issue. But I think toward the end, in the last installments, something was missing that had been present for so long in the Discworld series. It was okay because mainly of the McAfee goal, which I absolutely love, and the goal, but overall as a plot and the interest that holds throughout the book, definitely it's not the same quality from previous books. I think that's been an issue for the last 3 or 4 books. But of course, Terry Pratchett, who is a legend and will stay a legend, was very sick by the time he wrote these. I'm still grateful that we get these. It was touching knowing that it was his last written work, and yeah, I'm very glad that I am done with it, but it's also bittersweet. Then before I left for Italy, I actually managed to finish Jade Fire Gold. This is a YA fantasy that came in my Fairy Loot subscription box for November, if I'm not mistaken. I've done a whole unboxing, and that's just You can find it here, so I'm not going to show you too much, but it's a stunning book. The premise that you follow two perspectives. One is a boy who has lost the throne. His family has lost the throne. They were betrayed and the family fled, and he's the only survivor of the family and he wants to reclaim the throne. And then you follow a girl who is a peasant, normal girl, struggling to survive in a very tough world, and all of a sudden she's in a market one day and she does something out of the ordinary, and all of a sudden their path will collide. I'm just gonna keep it brief. This is of course a 2021 release, and unfortunately this was just unremarkable for me. I pretty much forgot everything that had happened in a week or so. It was predictable. It kept my attention for, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of it, and then I just lost interest. I think the writing, it was too simplistic. I understand why sometimes YA are written in that way they're written, of course, because of the target audience. But I also think that, you know, if authors would put a bit more effort and make it a bit less simple and the plot just less predictable, that would also work for YA. Like, I remember when I was a young reader that I honestly, I don't think I would have loved this even if I was 14, 16, 17. So that's kind of bad. But at the same time, there are no qualities that I can perfectly say, oh, this is awful, this was awfully done, the characters were horrible, the plot didn't make sense. It did make sense, it was just very unremarkable and predictable. So I ended up giving this 3 stars because I do tend to rate things based on what they are. So if it's a YA fantasy that didn't do anything particularly well or anything particularly wrong, it just stays in the middle, if it makes sense. 3 stars, won't continue on with the series though. I'm just gonna keep this book because it's just stunning. Then, when I was at Read in Italy, I did finish Bloody Rose, and this is book number 2. Ouch, this was book number 2. This is book number 2. I categorize this as a hero fantasy in a sense, in meaning that you have Bloody Rose, who's definitely a hero in these. This is the sequel slash companion book to Kings of the Wild that I read in October and absolutely loved. So I wanted to immediately continue on, and I think it's the only book in the whole year that actually I acquired and read immediately after reading the first one. Now, I didn't know when I acquired it that this was not following the same characters, although there were some recurrences from Kings of the Wild, and that these took place, I think, decades after the events or around that time. Let me probably say that Nicholas Eames, I love his writing style. I like his humor, and I will definitely be picking up his stuff moving forward. I will pick up the other installment in the companion series and we'll continue on. But personally, I didn't like this as much as I liked King of the Wild. Kings of the Wild was 5 stars, hands down. I gave this 4.25, and it would have been a 4 star if it wasn't for the ending that got me in tears. But I think one of the things that I didn't notice as much in Kings of the Wild is that the Eames tells you this swashbuckling story, basically this quest story with these amazing characters, faulty and amazing characters at the same time, from the perspective of secondary character, not from the hero perspective. And while in Kings of the Wild, I felt like all the team at the end of the day were the protagonists, so I didn't mind that we were following Slowhand perspective mainly, because I still thought it was still shining through. In this, the fact that we follow the story from the perspective of a bard, so not the main hero, not Bloody Rose. Bloody Rose is not the one narrating this story. So we see all her heroic actions, and her trajectory throughout the book is told from a second perspective. I didn't like that choice as much. I understand what he's doing. It's definitely something that has not been done often in fantasy, and I appreciate that, but not as much in this one. So yeah, we'll continue on for sure though. If you've read Kings of the Wild, you will probably want to continue on. I would still suggest do continue on. But yeah, just not as good as Kings of the Wild for me personally. And that was a hint of my unpopular opinion, as I think many people actually loved Bloody Rose more than Kings of the Wild, or people are quite divisive on which one is the best. And now we're gonna delve into the very much unpopular opinions, because of course I like to lose subscribers basically. So I read The Princess Bride. This is a very famous book that there is a movie out for. This has been out for ages and I never read the book. It was not a classic where I come from, in Italy at least, and I never heard of this before I moved here. So this is the story basically of Buttercup, who falls in love with the stable boy. The stable boy says, I'm gonna move to America, find fortune so then I can come back and marry you and give you the life you deserve. And then he gets abducted, killed, like we don't know what happens to him. So she's desperate and she agrees to marry this Prince Humperdinck, who is basically a piece of shit, and mayhem ensues. Okay, listen, so I did appreciate the humor. I think it started very strong. I was intrigued, I was hooked, I really appreciated some of the characters, but the interruptions, this author that every 10 pages or even not that sometimes would just interrupt the story to say, oh, then this happened, but I'm gonna, not let you read through 20 pages of this because it's pointless, and then it would tell us our story. So disruptive. I hated it, and I actually wanted to skim read this so badly, and I forced myself not to do it. I brought this book to Italy and left it to my grandma's house. Keep it, do whatever what you want. I'm not gonna carry that on my back. I didn't hate it. It's not gonna be in my worst books of the year, but I definitely did not like it. And I gave it a very generous 3 stars because, again, I think it was not for me. Like, I don't think it was a book that the quality necessarily was bad. I think the choices that the author makes in interrupting the story and the way he told the story ultimately didn't work for me, but I cannot say this was inherently bad, if it makes sense. So it's just a me problem. So it's still a 3 stars, but definitely a book that I don't need to keep, I will never read. But said that, I think this would work amazing in a movie format, so I will definitely proceed to watch the movie, and I got a hint that I might like the movie very much. And finally, the last book I read in December was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and this is the story of Strange the Dreamer, who is an orphan raised by monks to be basically a librarian, mostly unremarkable in a world where there are this powerful family of which the nephew, or like the heir, is it's an alchemist, and he is in the pursuit of finding the formula to make gold, basically, when you start this book. And also in the background you have Stranger, who's fascinated by the city of Weep, a city that actually the real name is lost, so no one knows the actual name of the city, but everybody has been calling it Weep, and it seems like almost it's become this legend now. And Stranger has always been fascinated by Weep, and one day this very peculiar convoy gets in the city and they say, we are from Weep, we want to go back to Weep, but we need an equipe and a team of people that will help us resolve the situation that's been going on in Weep for so long. And that's the basic gist premise. It's a bit complicated in the beginning, and I've probably done a very poor job to explain this, but that's the way I would describe it, basically. So I was, of course, hooked by the writing, and I was very fascinated in the beginning, before and through our travel to Weep, and the city, of course, was very fascinating. But overall, ready for it, I didn't love this. I just didn't love this. I thought the plot was okay. There are elements that are extremely fascinating, and the way she tells them, because she's such a skilled writer, makes them look like one of the most wonderful things you've ever read, and that's the skills of the author. So I did appreciate this for that. With me not loving these, I still gave these 3.5 stars. It's definitely a very strong 3.5 stars. I just, though, for many people that love these two pieces and put these on their favorite list, favorite books of the year, for many years I've seen these going around, it wasn't that for me. I thought that some of the things were very predictable. I was definitely more of a fan for Another Couple, I thought, than what we get, and I've loved if these would go in more LGBTQ plus side of things. I'm just gonna say that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I would have loved to see that couple happening, and it's pretty clear that we want. And I also thought toward the end, like the twists, I called all the twists, and that also kind of, there wasn't that wow moment because I knew. But also I think toward the end something happens which is kind of a big deal, and I found that I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say silly. Like, I think what happened to one of the protagonists here, it's so dumb. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Really, that's what happens? Like, that's how that happens? Ending predictable, apart from that silly thing that happened. It was like, that's just so silly. And then that other thing happened. It was like, you know, you're supposed to be so clever. Of course that character is gonna do that and you would end up in this situation. Like, you are so smart throughout the book, you didn't see this coming. So I was a bit frustrated with that. It's just a duology, so I do plan at one point to read the second one. I got it on script, I think the ebook, so I might just do that and then decide if I love the sequel. I will buy a physical copy. If not, I will just sell these. It's a very unpopular opinion. Like, a majority of people, like I think 99.9% of people that read these love these, so I'm definitely not in the majority, so you might want to give it a try and then we can discuss it in the comments down below. If we have different opinions, that'd be great. So that was it for December. Thank you so much. I'm gonna do a reading stats 2021, and I'm gonna do favorite and worst books of 2021 soon. I'm gonna plan to probably upload more than one video, finger crossed if I can with work, a week for at least the next month, and if it works well, continue on with the trend, but again, we will see. Take care of yourself, guys. Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.